Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. And please meet us on Twitter, well, also known as, well, X, formerly known as Twitter, the Santita J, and Santita Jackson Show. Um, chat line, and then of course the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. When you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Hey Robert, shalom to you, my dear brother, and everybody. Please share. Hey Ashley King down there in Memphis, like and share, like and share, like and share, like and share, like and share. We want to hear from you today, and please get that conversation going. And then, of course, let's talk about Kamala Harris, who in 2 days has raised more than $200 million. $200 million. She has generated so much excitement, and yet. Um, as we look at the excitement that she's generating, there is yet another conversation that we're not hearing in corporate media. And we want to amplify that conversation so that we can do whatever we can um, to rectify whatever she might have done in the past that didn't work out well for us, right? um because I don't want to give up on anybody, but I know that just as we heard about Hunter Biden and how he might be problematic for President Biden had he run, that was a chatter. Read a lot of the articles going back. They wondered about that. Well, the issue became in 2019 uh, her prosecutorial record. First of all, her role as a prosecutor, and then her record as a prosecutor. And in fact, we remember the presidential campaign did not work out very well for her. But Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers and Dwight McKee, a senior advisor to Cornell West and dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Education Project here in Chicago, and Reginald Geist, the forgotten one, he has got a tremendous, tremendous story. In fact, he is incarcerated right now, but we're blessed to be able to speak with him right now. And I am going to let these people, I'm going to let them know. I'm going to send her a text, and we're going to get going because I want to talk about what the GOP now, Representative Myers, they're now going after. They're now going after Vice President Harris on her prosecutorial record, and they're leading with this talking point: did she incarcerate too many black men? Because see, they're doing the internal data. Well, we know how these campaigns work, and they have one of the most sophisticated campaigns ever. So much so that it was studied after 2016 because they use the most sophisticated intelligence and data mining. And that was thanks to Jared Kushner, who has a lot of friends in that space. And one of the things that we saw, what they have seen is where they can get black men, and they've been able to pull a nice chunk of black men. And so let me start. Let me start with you, Dwight, because that is now a GOP talking point. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a legitimate talking point, and I think she's going to pay a price for that. She had get a campaign coming out of conservative California. She ran statewide, and most of the state is very conservative. And she did her make get a reputation of prerogatives of putting an excessive amount of black men in jail. And I think she has to be accountable for that, has to explain that, and has to pay a price for having done that. Now, whether or not it'll cost her the election is kind of a different discussion, and how well can the GOP uh, take advantage of that when many of them was the constituency she was trying to appeal to was a conservative Republican constituency in California. And so I'm not sure if they can put that arrow in their quiver or not. But I think she, just like Biden, really have to be accountable for that. That we can't keep developing our political careers at prerogatives of black men and black women, some of whom, many of whom are innocent or who don't have the wherewithal to be able to afford a lawyer to get them out of jail. I think she absolutely has the answer for that.
Mm. She was in Milwaukee kicking off her national campaign yesterday, Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers. Um, what did you see? I know we saw a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement, but I'm bringing it, and we're waiting for Mr. Geis. He's now back here. I'm going to add him to the stage shortly. This is another conversation that people are having. And one of the things that I've learned from Reverend Jackson in politics is that you lead with your vulnerability and you get strengthened there, and then you can go from and you can go from strength to strength. So first of all, what happened in Milwaukee? What was that like?
Well, I was there yesterday at the rally. It was electrifying, to say the least. You had mobilized quite a few people to come out. It was at least about 3,000 people in a high school gymnasium in West Dallas, Wisconsin. All different races, ages were there to see her launch this presidential campaign. There were quite a few men in general that were there. There were quite a few black men that were there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you saw the cross demographic of America in the room that was there and ready to be energized and be on the ground to try to win this campaign. Um, so what I will say is that I think that everybody knows that Kamala Harris was a prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
She has talked openly about her being a prosecutor in the ADA's office in California, in San Francisco, in Alameda County, and then as the attorney general for the state. So I don't think there's any big surprise there. And we all understand that prosecutors prosecute crimes. That's their job. So the fact that she did her job, I don't think should be, held against her in that respect. I think what folks need to look at who want to make that argument a little bit deeper is look at the fact that that the three strikes law in California was done by referendum back in the 1990s and is approaching its 30th anniversary in that state. So looking at what she did while she was AG, I think is something that folks need to do and look at some of the reforms that she tried to make as the AG, which probably led her to becoming a legislator and running for the US Senate, because you effectively change law when you can write law and policy. So she's talked about that shift from learning it from being a prosecutor and then wanting to effectively create law that would help and change policy. So I think that's something that folks need to look at, but also go back and peel the layers back and look at the fact that here was a state that through referendum elected to have mandatory minimums, which in my opinion do not work. We know that mandatory minimums really don't work. You should have judicial, review for folks that are judges. That's what we have judges for, so that they can take cases on a case by case basis and try to meter out the correct punishment, if you will, for people who are found guilty of committing crimes. So I think that's something, it should be an example for other states. I live in a state that has certain mandatory minimums, not so much like the three strikes law, but we do have truth in sentencing, which changed the game for us back in 2001 when our state legislature passed the truth in sentencing law in Wisconsin. So people have to do at least the majority of their sentence. And you started to see those sentences get longer because certain crimes automatically have mandatory minimums. So I think that's the bigger question and the takeaway that people should have as they're starting to look at this issue through the lens of prosecutorial records.
Well, I want you to please, everybody, continue to participate. We're having a discussion that Representative uh, Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers. The reason I wanted to arc the discussion, or really the Lord kind of led it in this direction, because I was just going to talk. It was going to be wasn't going to be quite this, but I'm glad we're doing this because I'm hearing different conversations. We both went to college, and so and I've seen the excitement that people have. And please, the vice president and I were at Howard together at the same time, and so I see the excitement that Howardites have. I see the excitement that those of us in the Divine Nine have. But I'm very clear that that is still but a portion of Black America. It's not the biggest portion. Um, it's a portion. Uh, the overwhelming conversation that I heard out of California in 2019 when she started her presidential run was the narrative about her being a prosecutor, and people were not happy about that. And that's revisiting us, because that is what the GOP is driving with. But guess what? It's not that. I just had a couple of people. We just had someone in the last hour, Cassandra Greer Lee, who absolutely agreed with her. And you're like, I want to support her. And of course, you are the executive director. You are the director and founder of the Nicholas Lee Foundation, uh, in honor of your husband, who died from COVID when he was in jail at the beginning of the pandemic. No one would attend to him, as much as you begged the uh, the powers that be, the sheriff, please, he's got all the symptoms. Can you all help him? And they didn't, and he died. And so it's just turned you into a fighter for not just for those who are incarcerated, but people who are out here who have no one to speak for them, the unvoiced. So what are you hearing? What are the discussions you're hearing? We want to bring Reginald Geis up. So Mr. Geis, what I need you to do is just to click the audio portion so that we can bring you up, because we want to hear your story. Cassandra?
Yes, I do. First of all, once again, thank you so much, Santita, for having me on. And I do agree with what Ms. Meyer said. The prosecutor's job is to prosecute. But as we saw, and I'm so grateful for people like Kim Fox that are prosecutors, but they realize that sometimes, you know, everybody that go before the judicial system is not guilty. So sometimes, you have to go back and revisit and rectify some of the wrongdoings of others, like the police department and different entities. So I believe that because she has such a large amount, of black and brown men that were prosecuted under her.
When she was a prosecutor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So like you said, we're just looking for answers. We want to hear what what's the next step. What's the next step? We want to address what has happened, and we want to move forward. What's the next step? What are we going to do? Let's rectify. Let's answer. Let's address some of the concerns that we have, and let's move forward.
Do you think this is a real issue for her in the Black community right
It
now?
is. It is. It is.
Why do you think we're not hearing about it on in corporate media? I mean, it's as if this issue does not even exist, Cassandra.
Um, I can't say why it's not. What it's
Well,
not.
no, just let just marinate on that for a hot second. Let me go to Dr. LaShawn Latrice. How are you? Of course, community organizer from. I'm so glad that you are with us today, making noise for change. Talk to us. What are you hearing about this candidacy?
Good morning, Santita. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and thank you to my sister, Cassandra Gurley, for inviting me to this conversation. Um, I too am hearing the same thing that Cassandra's talking about, and I think the reason why you don't hear it necessarily in mainstream media is because it's among the unpopular conversation. So a lot of the conversations, I'm a community psychologist. A lot of the conversations that we have on a grassroots level, and because we are dealing with impacted people who are impacted by the judicial system, and incarceration. A lot of the voices are not being heard because they are behind the walls. And so it's up to people like us to magnify those conversations and bring them to the forefront. So I think that mainstream media does not really want to cover these type of conversations, but they are definitely being had in these circles that we travel in. We have several networking committees and functions that we work in, silos that we work in on a regular basis. And many people are very concerned about these issues that are being discussed right now. And the only way I think that we can really have an honest conversation is people are going to have to go into the communities and have conversations with
Mhm.
people like who are really impacting change or trying to make a difference within those people that are being impacted by incarceration and poverty and things like that.
Well, I mean, and it's a real conversation. Before we go to Mr. Geis, and that's why Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers, I want to have this conversation because I don't want us to hide it, Representative Myers. You know, these are conversations that you encounter as you're trying to get people registered to vote, when you're trying to get people to vote. These are real issues, Representative Myers, and I'm just trying to put it out there because it to see her get dinged by this is like, ooh, she's going to have to deal with this before this becomes a real culture war within the Black community. Representative Myers.
I think you're right. It's going to have to be addressed. I think it started way back in what 2019, when there was the original presidential run. That was a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Given the climate, especially during that time when people were first paying. I'm going to say people, and when I say people, I mean those of us that don't have individuals in our families or know somebody that has ever been touched by the justice system, which I honestly believe could be nobody,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody has somebody that's been touched by the justice system.
Oh yeah.
But in the United States, we get a lot of our information about prison off of television. I've worked in a prison. You would not be surprised. People called me my first day of work and said, "How many people got shanked today?" I was like, "I don't work at Oz. It's not like TV." And I think that's the first thing, is that most people, if you've never been touched by the justice system or had to visit somebody in a prison, they've never been. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't know or understand the cultural nuances that exist when you have to help somebody who is behind the wall understand those things. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions, like I said, because people get a lot of their knowledge from Hollywood, a lot of it. The other piece of that is understanding the culture of the United States. When people go to prison, it's the lock them up and throw away the key mentality. There is no real forethought or additional thought about people who have been locked up, and we still treat them even after they've done their time like second class citizens. So when you talk about restoration of voting rights, when you talk about people who are in county jails that are only on misdemeanors, that still have the ability to vote in some places, they're not even given that opportunity. So I think there are quite a few different conversations that have to be had when you talk about how the justice system has impacted what the conversations that the mainstream media is having or even talking about when it comes to how we treat people who are incarcerated. I know I read Mrs. Lee's husband's story. When you talk about healthcare
Mm-hmm.
behind bars and what that looks like when you have a mass pandemic. And we had people dying in county jails all across the country because COVID was running rampant. You live in close quarters. Folks were not, giving people masks early and often and right away and medicating them, and compassionate release was not being used at that point to get people who were nonviolent offenders out of prison so that they could have compassionate release and go home. So all of these things are things that we've talked about and that I've talked about as a state legislator, but that even my colleagues that mostly are Republicans, we are in a Republican majority, don't want to talk about, because it's looked at as being soft on crime. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the other part of that conversation, is that how do you juxtapose this when you talk about a national campaign and you talk about somebody running for president, and the people are like, oh, well, what are Republicans going to say to counter that? Because they have for a long time wanted to be the tough on crime. We will lock you up. We will give you mandatory minimums. We support this. We support being tough on crime. But now, are they going to try to make commercials that say Kamala Harris was too tough on crime?
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
She, I'm like, so either you damned if you do, you damned if you don't. In this situation, you have a person who that was their job, that was their vocation, to go after criminal behavior and to lock people up when they, when that was appropriate, to be the top cop in the state of California, to make sure that you try to clean up the streets and you do these things. So now they're going to try to turn this on its head and say, well, she did it a little too well. She locked up, more black people, even though we know the law is skewed to lock most of us up anyway, because that's how it was written. She didn't write the policy to do it. And that would be my counter, with folks who want to talk about this. In the general conversation of our community, I think we have to have, like I said, deeper conversations about how policy impacts us. And that's a lot of what I do, educating the public in my role as a legislator. We have an issue with reckless driving in Wisconsin right now. And people are saying, oh, you got to do something. I say, and do what? What extent, to the extent of doing what? We talk about enhancing penalties. That's the first thing that people want me to do, is enhance penalties. And I say, okay, how do we enhance penalties without doing that and making it so that police are now over policing in black and brown communities? That's always the counter. I don't want to do it in such a way where first time offenders are now being locked up in county jail. That's what I have to think about as a person that writes law. So I think we have to have these conversations out loud. Thank you, Santita, for forcing us to do that. But I think it's also something that this needs to be talked about in the barbershop. It needs to be talked about, at church. It needs to be talked about in all the places that we go. When you talk about that in the grand scheme of a national campaign.
But see, the reason I'm bringing it up is because when you try to bring it up, people, because I know what happened to me when I was talking to folks about bringing up this conversation. You need to be quiet because what we need to do is get her elected. I said, you won't get her elected if you don't have this conversation, because this is what pushed her out the race in 2019. She didn't even get. I mean, remember that?
Yeah,
So I'm
I
like,
think that was a big piece of it. I
that was
also think that was also one of the legs that people who are socially educated about the law, and I'm going to use that term loosely, the internet, bros that are now political scientists and that are lawyers for online.
well, no, but that's part of it. But I talk to people in California
Mm-hmm.
who had family in the system, who've been in the system. But just stay right there, because I have attorney C.K. Hoffler with us. But and I'm glad you got here. The chair of Rainbow Push, past president of the National Bar Association, which is the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, more than 65,000 lawyers. Yes, she was president of that. She's one of their past presidents, but she is also a legal analyst on Court TV, and a leader in our community. And we're just so grateful to have her here. Um, Dwight wanted us all to hear Reginald Geis's story. And Cassandra brought Reginald Geis here. Cassandra, before we bring on Mr. Geis, who is he and why did you bring him here? I'll let you introduce him.
Reginald Geis is the forgotten one. He is a young man that is doing a natural life sentence for a nonviolent drug case offense. Uh, it's absolutely horrible. We have been advocating for Mr. Geis because Governor Pritzker uh, has made a huge mistake. He thought that he released everyone that was sentenced in Illinois to life for a nonviolent drug offense, but we're trying to bring it to his attention that he forgot one, which is Mr. Geis. So we're having a hard time doing that. But thanks to you, Santita, for always standing with us. We know that you're gonna help amplify his story and in his situation. And Mr. Geis is he's progressing because he's back in court on a post conviction in Peoria, but I feel as though it's so wrong that he even have to go through these measures and these steps and still suffer behind the walls when, Mr. Governor Pritzker thought that he released everyone.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna let no one can tell his story better than himself. So I'm gonna let Mr. Geis speak for himself.
And that's part of the reason that this panel is here, and I want you to hear it, hear his story, Attorney Hoffler, because it's something that, I know at Rainbow Push, when Reverend hears the story, he'll want us to get on top of this. And so, Mr. Geis, welcome to the show, or should I say, welcome home. So, talk to us. Um, because what's interesting, Attorney Hoffler and Dwight McKee and Representative Myers and Cassandra Greer Lee, which is what she told me, and Dr. Latrice, he actually is a supporter of Kamala Harris. He supports Vice President Harris and her run for the presidency. Well, why don't we start there? Why do you support Vice President Harris, Mr. Geis?
I support her because I watched her, and I wasn't aware of her prior record in California as the Attorney General and the District Attorney, but I watched her in the Senate work alongside Cory Booker on criminal justice reform,
Mm-hmm.
and I was impressed. I did research since then and found out the things that she's did, right. But I agree with Representative Myers that, I mean, she was doing her job. We have the tendency to try to hold our own uh, more accountable than we hold others, and we demand more of our own than we demand from others. And I understand that to an extent, but at the same time, like, we're in a position now where we have a binary choice. So it's no, I wish this person was there, or I'm going to waste my vote on this person. Like, it's Kamala or Trump. So ain't no in between. So I support Kamala, be, not simply because she's just against Trump. I just think she would be a better president, and I think that she can right some of her wrongs while in office, which I thought her and Biden would do together. But I can't hold her accountable because Biden didn't move, because she can only do what Biden allow her to do. But I think in
But
a
you know
position,
what can happen, Mr. Geis? Stay right there.
yes,
You always hold people accountable, but what this is why we have to. She's in the suites. We have to be in the streets.
yeah,
And one of the things I think that happened to us in the Obama years, we really absolutely buried protest because we wanted to protect one person, and then we lost. We can't let that happen again, right? And and the thing is, nobody. And the thing is, we have to learn how to express our disenchantment or disagreement with someone, Mr. Geis. We have to stop attacking people personally.
yeah.
Just say, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. That's it. So, but let's
And we
let's
need and we need more. I speak to people about lobbyists, right? Because lobbyists is like, or I consider it, or people consider it like it's a bad thing or bad, but we actually need, on our behalf. That's how, the LGBT community, the Asian community have lobbyists that go and lobby for their interests. We don't have that as much, and we need that. I mean, on a local level as well as in Washington, D.C. But we need more lobbyists, like people that's going to go represent us and represent our interests, and that's how we can get things done.
Well, that's, those are your civil rights organizations. Dr. King was your lobbyist. Whitney Young was your lobbyist. Clarence Mitchell was your lobbyist. And Jesse Jackson has been your lobbyist. And that's what we have to do. That's why we need advocates. Would you share with us your story? And I'd love for you to respond to what you're hearing, Attorney Hoffler, as he shares this story with us, because you are serving natural life for a nonviolent drug offense. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. In Illinois, under the Habitual Criminal Act, they give the discretion to the prosecutor. Uh, if a person has two Class X felonies in their background, then the prosecutor has the absolute discretion to file a verified statement, right? To have you adjudged a habitual criminal. Once they do that, at that point, once the judge accepts that, then the judge hands is tied, and they're forced to give you a mandatory life sentence. So in my situation, I went pro se, and I think that the prosecutor on my case, I think she took that as I don't know, a slight, or maybe like, how does he think he can go up against us? But I just didn't feel comfortable with any other lawyers in that particular town. So I represented myself, and she moved to have me adjudged a habitual criminal. And the judge did not want to sentence me to natural life, but he was forced to, based on the prosecutor filing a verified statement. So after I was given a life sentence, then I was taken to the Illinois Department of Corrections, and I was there for 4 years. And one day they kidnapped me and put me on two planes and sent me to Oklahoma, which I presently reside. And I've been fighting like every day. I've been fighting the whole 13 years I've been incarcerated, but I've been fighting every day to bring attention to my situation. Prior to the election of 2022, it was five people
Hmm.
serving for
Okay, we just lost you
the
for a
governor's
second.
office released a statement saying that all people serving licenses have been commuted. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh no, no,
Well,
we were
yeah, I was
losing you.
saying prior to the election of 2022, it was five people. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, okay.
I got you. You're back. We
Go
got
ahead.
you. Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, prior to the election, it was five people serving life for drugs. Four were released. We all had clemency petitions pending at the same time, and four of them were granted, and mine's was not. Like, and I never got a clear explanation as to why, what makes me different. And what's even more frustrating for me is that, they released a statement saying that they commuted all the sentences of people serving life for drugs, as well as Jennifer Sobel, the Illinois Prison Project. She stated that there is nobody serving life for drugs in Illinois, and it's a pretty big deal. Well, she was aware of my situation because she was co-counsel on my case. But yet, so she was co-counsel on my case, but she was counsel on the other cases. So when they got released, right, for some reason she forgot me or wanted to take a victory lap and act as if I don't exist because I'm being hidden in Oklahoma and I can't be found in the system. Like, if you look me up on Oklahoma DOC, I can't be found. If you look me up on Illinois DOC, I can't be found because of the Interstate Corrections Compact Agreement. I don't have enough time to discuss all of that, but that's where I'm presently at, and I'm continuing to fight to bring my situation to the governor's attention. But I'm also fighting in court as well, and but the court situation only happened because of the governor's not acting, or releasing me, or I wouldn't be in court. So yeah, I'm doing everything I can to get out. And yes, I do support Kamala for the reasons stated. And I just wish more people in our community would educate themselves about both candidates and educate themselves about why it's not just hyperbole. Well, it's not hyperbole at all to say that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, because I truly believe that he is, and I believe that if he get in office, America would never be the same.
Hmm. And you say that from prison.
Yes, yes, where he should be. I'm sorry.
You don't have to, honey, don't apologize anymore. You don't live your life as an apology. Live it as an affirmation. You're all good. Stay right there.
Yeah.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Because let me just say this before you respond. Reginald, guys, I don't know what God is doing with you in your life, but I know that God is doing something. My great grandmother used to say to me that God is too
Yes.
kind to be cruel and too wise to make a mistake. There's something that God needs you to do. God is using you right now. I don't know where Malcolm X would have been. He just would have been dead in a heap somewhere, but he went to prison and then made his way to the library and read every book in it and became a changed man, and he continued to evolve.
Mm,
It is in those cracks that the flowers can bloom. So don't you say
yes.
you're sorry about anything else anymore, not on this show and any place else. You are not an excuse. You're a human being, and there's a reason that God has you here. And you are
Yeah.
somebody. You're God's child. And you are
I
inspiring
appreciate it.
people who are around you, and you're inspiring us here today. and you will be back on this show, and we're going to do everything we can to get you out. Attorney C.K.
Thank you
Hoffman.
for your kind words.
I mean it. They're from my heart to yours. Attorney Hoffler.
Right.
First of all, Mr. Geist, thank you for sharing.
Okay, we need you to turn up your volume, Attorney Hoffler. Yep.
Is that better? Is this better?
Nope. It needs to be louder, louder, louder.
Is it better now?
No, a little, but you sounding like it's very low.
Okay, this is as loud as I can get, unfortunately. Okay, I'll raise my voice. Is that better?
Oh, that's a little better. But you know what I want you to do? Sign out and come back in.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll bring you back in. Dwight, why don't you respond um, to Reginald Geist, because you have worked with the incarcerated for decades, and you've been an inspiration to people for decades. Talk to us, Dwight.
Well, first, let me congratulate the brother for his positive attitude. Is that the first the precursor to freedom really is in your attitude. And if you maintain your faith, you'd be surprised the kind of miracles that God can provide in your life. And so it seems to me that you've gone from a prisoner to an example,
Mm.
and that God will honor that and bless that. Just maintain your faith and your peace in all of this. Uh, it's going to be very difficult for the Republicans to use this as an issue other than those black men who feel violated, who are victims of these laws. They, I think they are a little more sophisticated than these Republicans give them credit for,
Mm.
and um, they will hold Kamala accountable for her behavior, but not at the expense of jumping to the Trump side. Many of them will not jump to the Trump side. For that, they may figure out some other reasons to go to that side. But I don't. I think they'll be able to separate the role that Kamala played again, which she needs to be accountable for. Um, and I think that one of the things that I was just talk about the policy side of that
Mhm.
is that we should have to remember is that those three strike laws were lobbied for by the prison industrial complex, by the prison unions were the ones behind those three strike laws. And that their goal was not justice, but jobs. They wanted to make sure there were enough black people in jail, that they would be able to turn their jobs into careers. And they had long range uh, goals of making sure that there was a path into jail, because they had set their pension funds up, and they had set their vacations up, and they had set their retirement plans up around a certain amount of people being in jail and over a certain amount of time. And so this was a career move. This was a jobs bill for many of the people in California who lobbied for the three
Mhm.
strikes that you're out, that we end up paying a tremendous price for. So I think that one of the things, the reason I think that she needs to be accountable for is because now is the head of the Democratic Party and as potential president, she could begin to create legislation
Mhm.
that reverse this great injustice that was done. And she could begin to create recompense for people who have been violated or have been put in jail unjustly, and has never had recourse to address their situations, like the brother in jail now. And so I think that she should be uh, probably one of the highly active in reversing such a great wrong. I mean, Claude Clinton said, and Biden said from the injustice they did on the prison complex, the prison industrial complex side was, oh yeah, oops, yeah, I put a million extra black folk in jail, poor
Mhm.
them, poor me, and moved on. And I would think that Sister Harris would have much more sensitivity to that kind of issue and has a chance to help kind of amend some of that.
And what you do is you start, Attorney Hoffler, but you say it. So I've seen that injustice, and I didn't realize that at the time, but I was part of it, and I want to get things corrected. I mean, that makes you big.
It
I mean,
does.
and if you can turn the volume up just a little bit more. Ooh, ooh.
I I've have it as high as I can go.
Well, you know
Um,
what? You'll have to almost shout
okay.
so we can hear
Well,
you.
it
There
does.
you go. That's it.
Okay. No, it does. And first of all, I wanted to say to Mr. Geis, thank you so much for sharing your truth and sharing your life story. And God isn't done with you yet. I
Mm.
mean, there's so much in what you've said that we can use going forward and unpackage to help so many other people. I'm really sorry that you were a victim of that, and you represent so many thousands and thousands of people that sit in the same position as you in different jurisdictions throughout the country. I think we have an excellent opportunity right now. Of course, Vice President Harris has to be held accountable for her track record, of course. But I can tell you, as a lawyer, I have not been a prosecutor, but I have looked at the work of prosecutors. And I've looked at the work in particular of Black prosecutors throughout this country, because that was one of the issues that I looked at as when I was president of the National Bar Association.
Wait, because if I may jump in here, just put this carrot, because she
Yep.
ran as a reformer,
Yes.
and then you get in the system and you go, oh, this
Right.
is.
So imagine what it was like before she reformed. So she has to be, of course, she has to for
Wait
everything
a
that
minute.
she.
And as she walked into an office where the people who didn't want the reforms, they're still there. They're the deep state,
Right.
right?
So
Okay.
so absolutely. So her story as a prosecutor, what she did, what she didn't do as attorney general, all of those things, absolutely, she should be questioned, challenged, and asked about. Because I have looked at this issue as it relates to her long ago when she presented herself as a presidential candidate, I'm confident that she is the right person for criminal justice reform, the criminal justice reform that we need in this country. In fact, when we were meeting at the White House, this was 4 years ago, during when after George Floyd's murder, it was Vice President Harris who was our strongest advocate and ally for criminal justice reform and for the passage of the George Floyd Justice Policing Act. So I am very confident that on that issue, we are going to have an ally, but that does not remove the need for people to hear and for her to talk about her record just as any other candidate would have to do. I dare say, I hope that the Republicans go in that direction and challenge her on the incarcerations and all that, because they're going to have their heads handed to them on a platter as it relates to that issue. And they're going to be very, very surprised. And this is my final word on prosecutors, on Black prosecutors. What I will say, and I've talked to many of them, who are very progressive, who have instituted reforms and who have been targeted. And I will say this: thank God for them. The system is not perfect, but just as I say for some of our judges who are extraordinary civil servants who put their lives on the line every
Mhm.
single day, if they were not in the system, it would be much worse. Now, that does not address our great panelists here today, Mr. Geis, your story. It does not certainly address that because everybody individually who finds himself or herself incarcerated today does have a story, whether it's wrongfully or not. And I think that is what we need to focus on,
Mhm.
focusing on how, when there is an injustice, how we can turn that around and try to address the concerns. And that's something that I'd like to see we can explore. I don't know much about, other than what you're sharing with us today, but know much about your history. I don't do criminal defense work. I'm on the civil side. Of course, I do have access to many people who do criminal defense work, and maybe you've had a lot of people look at your case and try to help. I just don't know, but I'd like to continue the dialogue, and I can do that through Santita, um, not knowing how to access you directly, or through whoever brought you. I think it is it Cassandra, uh,
Yes.
Greer Lee. Maybe we can continue the dialogue and see what can be done. I mean, I'm willing to try. You just never know because God has a plan. But I must say,
Mhm.
I thank you for sharing your truth and your reality with us. And don't despair. There, you represent so many, and these are some of the struggles and some of the challenges that we have to confront in our community. I mean, one of the things that I am very, very, very big on is prison reform. That's a big focus of mine. It was a focus of mine as part of my criminal justice reform when I was president of the NBA, and it remains a focal point of what is important to me personally and as an advocate. So thank you for sharing. And Santita, whatever we can do, it all begins on a level like this with a
Yeah.
network where people talk and you find solutions because the human resources are there. And
Mhm.
sometimes it doesn't cost money. There's a misnomer, there's a misperception that you
Mhm.
have to have a lot of money. Certainly, if you have a lot of money, it becomes easier because you have access to the kind of legal services. But a lot of people who have been able to get justice, it didn't cost them the boatloads of money that they envisioned it would cost them. So I would say, as Reverend Jackson always has taught us to believe,
Mhm.
keep hope alive. Because I just hate to keep on repeating, Santita, what your dad has always said to us. You are somebody. Each of us is somebody.
But at some point in your life, if you keep on living, you're going to have to say that to yourself. When,
Absolutely.
as a Black lawyer, you get into a room full of white men and someone expects you to get the coffee. Hold it.
Oh, and well, hello.
We've had
Oh, are
those
you
experiences.
talking about what happened to me a couple weeks ago?
Oh, okay.
And I'm almost 40 years in, almost
No,
40
what?
years in, and have run
Five.
circles.
Come on.
I'm 37 years old, but I'm almost 40 years in as a practicing lawyer and have run circles around most of the lawyers who are in my space, my opposing counsel in particular.
Mm.
And yes, that still happens. So the struggle does continue on that level, but my struggle is certainly not the struggle that Mr. Geist has, and I recognize that. But each of us has a struggle in this place and in this space. And Vice President Harris has all those struggles pulled together, every last one, because she's a part of every other group out there. When there's a definition of other, she checks all the boxes. She's the other on many levels. And so I am optimistic that, but I do believe in holding people accountable. And she's prepared to answer questions. She must answer questions because we are expecting something different from her. She's going to be the presumptive nominee. And so we're expecting, just like every other candidate, that she's going to address her platform, which she intends to do about these critical issues to our community. I've already had the experience in interacting with her on
Mhm.
criminal justice reform, and that's why I take the position that I take as it relates to that issue.
Well, and we have to press her, and you don't press her in a way, or even Trump in a way that's unfriendly and unkind. You be respectful, and you hold your position. I'm going to go around the round table, and get closing thoughts from everybody. Um, you get a minute apiece, and I want you to have that. Let me start with you, Representative Lakeisha Myers.
I would just say that I agree with what CK has said, and that we have to do the work, and have to do all of it. I think, you can't have just one side of the conversation. I think we have to also remember those who are incarcerated and do the due diligence on their behalf as well to ask the questions and get the reforms that we need. But we also need to pay attention to the policy points and actually ask the questions when these bills are being presented and do the work on the front end and not be reactive. Once we see them take hold, the plans are usually already there and in place. We just have to pay attention to the lobbying efforts for them. So I would just encourage people to do that as well.
Dr. LaShawn Latrice, your closing thought?
Yes, my closing thoughts is I appreciate the everyone's input. I really thank the panel and everyone here for, especially Reginald Geis, for sharing their story. And I'm glad that we're opening up a larger conversation. I am looking forward to what is to come, what we may be able to learn and draw from what our differences are, from those things that we want to hold Kamala Harris accountable for, but I also am looking for the unified collaborative approach of what we can do collectively to get to some sort of understanding of how we can move forward, where all of us who are impacted by these systems that are put in place are put at ease, and knowing that we're putting someone in office who is actually going to represent us and carry forward that mantle.
Mhm. And we have to push her to do that. Remember,
Absolutely.
on the day that she is elected, MAGA are her constituents too, and that's fair. Because see, if someone gets into office that we don't want to be ignored by him or her either. But we
Absolutely.
have to advocate and do it respectfully and stop making it personal. Everybody, don't respond. Don't do what everybody else does. Be respectful, and let's continue to move forward. Dwight McKee, your closing thought?
I just want to see the black men that if you think three strikes and you're out was a problem, you wait till we get to 2025. You ain't seen nothing yet. And so we have to be very cautious and very conscious that we don't get used and played emotionally in such a way
Hmm.
as we become our own worst enemy.
Do you think that's what we're watching now?
That's what I think if we're not careful, we can come to.
Hmm.
Because I think we may get fixated on the past and not spend enough time looking at the future. And the Republicans have a plan for the future
They do,
that's much more hostile
and it's
than
also.
the three strikes and you outlaws that we end up suffering from.
And Mr. Geis, as you close us out, I mean, this is also designed to put a cleave in the within the black community between black men and black women. And the fact is, we go when you want to go fast, you go by yourself. When you want to go far, you got to go together. The only way we're gonna
Yeah.
make it is together. I need you, you need me, and let's go. That's
And we
why I'm
have
so glad that you're here. Your closing thought, Reginald Geis, and you're not the forgotten one.
my
We're
my
gonna have to come up
I
with a new moniker for you. We got to come because that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You gonna be the blessed one. How about that?
yes, thank you.
Or the
My
blessing.
closing Yes, my closing thought is like we have to be open to other people changing, right? So I want people, or I want the system to change, and I have to, and others as well have to Kamala has
Okay,
changed. Like
hold on.
people
We got to get you
evolve.
in.
Like
And hold
can't
on.
continue. We can hold it.
Okay, no, because you were going out. I just want to get you in the
Okay.
right place. Okay,
I'm sorry.
it's
No,
okay.
I was saying like we can we can hold her accountable, right? As we should, but at the same time, we have to accept and acknowledge that people do change, right? That's been my biggest problem is I've continued to pay a debt to society that I thought was already paid because I've got more time for my prior convictions than my present conviction, which basically enhanced me and made me eligible for the natural life sentence. That's because my past is continuing to be used against me. So if I don't like that and it's happening to me, how am I going to hold her past against her? Now, if she don't change, then yeah, but she's made efforts and shown in the Senate, at least from what I've seen, that she's willing to embrace, criminal justice reform. So That's just my part.
You said a whole lot. Well, you know what, CK and Dwight and Representative Myers uh, and Dr. Latrice, we have our work cut out for us because we've got to get Reginald Geis out. And, we've got to set the captives free. That is what we've been told we need to do. And we need to bring joy to the heart that is saddened and make it a gladdened one. And I want to thank you, in particular, Reginald Geis, for your courage and for continuing to move on. Most of us, as I've gone through challenges in my life, my father said, the harm is not in falling; it's in not getting up. He said, if you keep on living,
Yeah.
you're gonna get knocked down. He maketh me to lie down beside the still waters. You're gonna get knocked down, and you're gonna have a think. Everybody, everybody. So I want you to keep your head up, Reginald Geis, and thank you for being the great example and the wonderful human being that you are. I just thank God that God has chosen you, trust you enough to use you. Think of it that way.
Yeah.
'Cause-
I mean, I do because each situation, even incarcerated, right? Each situation that God has put me in, right,
Mhm.
has he has put me in a situation, and I'm like, why did this happen? And it always was a better situation. So like, I know He got me no matter what. So I'm gonna be all right.
And let me tell you, the only reason God's doing it to you is because God trusts you. You ought to be very happy about that. Okay? Think about that.
Yeah.
God needs to know if God can
Yes.
trust you in trouble. Reverend Tommy uh, Lewis out of Alabama said that to me years ago. And so you just keep on going here, and you're going to hear from us. We got a lot of work to do, CK.
Okay.
We got to get him. CK, when will you be back on Court TV? Don't tell me you don't know. Everybody look at Court TV and listen to
Don't make
WAOK
me.
every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time so that you can hear her on her radio show. But go on Court TV because that is where she is a legal analyst.
Well, okay. Well, I was on yesterday. I will be on. I'm in Florida this week, so I will be on again next week. I don't have the times yet, but so it's not that I don't know. I just don't have the times because I haven't booked for next week yet.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get through this week. But I was on yesterday, and um,
Have them forward the clips to you so we can put them up and make them viral. That's
oh,
all I ask.
I will do that. Now that I can do. Well, thank you, my dear. I know it's like pulling teeth.
Ooh, the vapors, the vapors. I love you. Reginald Geis, Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers. Do you want to say anything to my favorite legislator before we get out of here? Well, you and Ron.
No, no, I think we've hit it all today.
Well, and the reason everybody, Dr. Latrice and Dwight, we took this tack is because this is the advocacy. I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have someone to work with Kamala Harris. Do we need to hold her accountable? Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I will never forget CK in 1984. There were sometimes the Reverend's campaign got a little rocky. And I remember Dwight, him saying, he said several things at that speech that just, I had to hold myself to keep myself from crying because it had been a really tough campaign, but wow, a fulfilling campaign. And he said, if my joy bell has lost its resonance, if I in taste, temper, or tone have hurt anybody, charge it to my head and not my heart. God is not finished with me yet. All you have to do is truly, truly, truly be sorry and want to make things right. That makes you an even bigger person, everybody. Bigger. Don't ignore. Don't ignore the pain that you might have caused. You might have meant to, you might not have meant to. Don't ignore it. Cop to it. It makes you bigger. It makes you better. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show and Dr. Latrice and Representative Myers and Dwight and Reginald Geis and CK Hoffler. Thank you for taking my midnight call.
Good to see you, CK.
Thank you.
I had
Thank you
fallen
for having us.
asleep. I was so tired yesterday, and I woke up at 9:48. I said, I don't have a show. Woo! But thank you, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the Santita Jackson Show. I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, everybody. Like and share the show. Like and share the show. God bless you.
God bless. God
Oh,
bless.
God bless.